So today, we're going to be looking at something I think a lot of authors struggle with. That is finding your book's niche.
Right.
We're going to be looking at an episode of the Author Success Podcast for this deep dive.
Okay, cool.
And they had some really good information in there.
Yeah, it's a topic that I think a lot of authors, especially new authors, kind of shy away from.
Yeah.
Almost like they think it's a bad word,
Right.
niche.
Yeah.
But it's so important, and they kind of break it down in a way that's like really easy to grasp.
Right. And I like how they, right away, they're like, okay, you have this book. It's like this great ship. You built this ship. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't have a destination, it's just sailing around.
It is. And a lot of authors worry that by niching down, they're somehow, limiting
Right.
the number of readers that they can reach.
Right.
But in reality, it's the opposite. By
Yeah.
niching down, you're making it so much easier for the right readers
Yeah.
to find.
Yes. And I love it. They give this example. We'll get into more specifics about, really figuring out what that niche is.
Okay.
But they're saying, imagine you have this coloring book
Right.
for adults, but it's just a general coloring book for adults. And you're competing with this other coloring book that is specifically for teen girls coping with depression.
Yeah.
And so, if you're a teen girl who's going through depression, you're going to search for that.
Right.
And you're not even going to see the general adult coloring book.
And this is really the crux of the issue, because when you don't have a niche, your book essentially becomes invisible.
Right.
It's a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Because there are literally millions of books out there. And if yours doesn't have a clear target audience, a clear purpose, a clear problem that it's solving,
Right.
it's going to get lost in the shuffle.
Right. And so they're saying, okay, before you even, come up with a title or any of that stuff, you need to ask yourself, who are you writing this for? And what problem are you solving for them?
And sometimes it's hard for authors to answer that question right away, because they're so close to their work. They've poured their heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the Author Success Podcast suggests is to actually write down 3 different types of people that would be interested in reading your book. So think about their demographics, their interests, their pain points.
Okay, so like, for instance, if it was a book about overcoming procrastination, it could be for somebody in college who's having trouble getting their homework done.
Right, a student who's struggling with deadlines.
Right, and then it could also be for an entrepreneur who is having trouble launching their business.
Exactly, or maybe even someone who's just feeling stuck in their personal life.
Right.
They have all these goals and dreams, but they just can't seem to take action.
Right.
And so by identifying these different types of people, you start to see the common threads. What are the underlying needs and desires that connect these individuals?
And I think it's almost like creating character profiles.
It is.
For your ideal reader.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to think about it, because the more you understand your ideal reader, the better you can tailor your book to their specific needs.
Right.
And here's the thing, it's not just about demographics, age, gender, location.
Right.
It's also about psychographics, understanding their values, their beliefs, their motivations.
Right. Yeah. So, are they somebody who really likes to read, self-help books anyway, or are they new to this?
Exactly. Are they skeptical?
Yeah.
Are they hopeful?
Right.
Are they looking for a quick fix, or are they looking for a deep dive?
Right.
All of these things factor into your niche.
It's funny because I was thinking about when I was trying to figure out what to focus on for my own podcast, I was so worried about, appealing to everyone that I ended up with this really vague concept. It was like, I wanted to talk about everything, but then it was like, well, what am I really...
Right. What's your unique angle?
Yeah, what am I really, bringing to the table?
And that's such a common trap that we fall into, right? We want to cast this wide net and appeal to as many people as possible. But in doing so, we often dilute our message, and we fail to resonate with anyone deeply.
Right. And so then once you've kind of figured out, okay, who's your ideal reader, then they're saying, okay, well, now you can actually go and look at some data.
Yeah.
And see what are people searching for.
Right.
So they're saying there are all these different tools, and I don't know if we want to name them all.
Yeah, we could mention a few. Like, for example, there's Google Keyword Planner.
Right.
There's also, sites like Amazon itself.
Yeah.
Has a search bar where you can see what people are typing in.
Right.
And then there are more specialized tools like KW Finder or RFs.
Right. Yeah. And so you can actually get in there and look at the data and see, okay, if I'm focusing on this particular problem for this particular type of person, what are they actually searching for?
What are the words that they're using?
Right.
Because that's going to give you valuable insights into how to position your book.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's actually discoverable.
Right, because if you are, using all this language that nobody's searching for, it doesn't matter if it's the best book in the world.
Right.
Nobody's going to find it.
It's going to be invisible.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that the benefits of having a niche go way beyond just discoverability.
Okay.
This is where things get really exciting, because we're not just talking about selling books. We're talking about building a platform, becoming an authority.
Okay.
And really making a difference.
Okay, I like where this is going. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, when you have a clearly defined niche, your marketing efforts become infinitely easier. You know exactly who to target, where they hang out online, and what kind of messaging resonates with them, right? It's like, instead of just throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on this.
You have a laser focus.
Yeah.
And your aim is true.
Yeah, and you're not wasting all this time and energy on people who are never going to be interested in your book anyway.
Right, and the Author Success Podcast highlighted another benefit that I think is really crucial.
Okay.
And that's becoming an expert in your niche.
Okay.
They made this great point that the whole world doesn't need your book.
Right.
But your tribe does.
I like that, yeah.
So by focusing on a specific group of people and their specific needs, you can become the go-to resource, the trusted authority in that space.
Right, and so as you build that expertise, people are going to start seeking you out.
Exactly.
Not just for the book, but
for your knowledge, for your insights.
Right, for your advice.
For your guidance.
Right, so you're not just an author, you're
a thought leader.
Yes.
You're a voice in your field. Okay, I'm really starting to see how this could be really powerful.
It is.
For authors.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's get a little bit more practical for a moment.
Sure.
Let's say, somebody has written a self-help book.
Okay.
How do they start to narrow down their niche using these ideas?
That's a great question, and I think that's something that a lot of authors struggle with.
Yeah.
So let's say this self-help book is about overcoming procrastination.
Okay.
Now that's a pretty broad topic, right?
Yeah, right.
A lot of people struggle with procrastination.
Yeah.
But what if instead of trying to appeal to every single procrastinator on the planet, they start to think about specific types of procrastinators?
Right.
So maybe they focus on students who are struggling with academic procrastination.
Right.
Or entrepreneurs who are delaying launching their businesses.
Right.
Or even creative types who have all these amazing ideas, but they just can't seem to get them out of their heads and onto the page.
Right. And so then instead of, self-help procrastination, it's, how to conquer college.
Yeah. A guide for students, or
launch now, stop procrastinating, and start your dream business.
Right.
And think about the keywords that those titles would attract. Students searching for help with procrastination are going to find conquer college.
Yeah.
Much more relevant than a generic procrastination book.
Right.
Plus, it immediately positions the author as an expert in helping students overcome procrastination, not just anyone and everyone.
And I think that's a really important point that they emphasize in the podcast, is that niching down is not about
limiting your potential.
Yes, it's about amplifying.
It's about focusing on what truly matters.
Yeah, so it's not that you're not going to help other people.
Right.
But it's like you're really going to hone in.
You're going deep instead of wide.
Yes.
And that allows you to make a much bigger impact.
Right. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop for today, and we'll continue this deep dive in the next episode.
Sounds good.
So until then, happy writing and happy niching down. It's funny because even before you start writing, this whole idea of niche can be so helpful. Imagine you're sitting down, you're like, okay, I want to write a romance novel. But instead of just stopping there, you're like, okay, what kind of romance reader am I trying to reach? Are you writing for the hopeless romantic who loves a fairy tale ending?
Right.
Or are you writing for someone who wants something a little more steamy?
Yeah.
A little more suspenseful.
A little darker.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? I was thinking about that. And you know how I'm always saying, I really love books that have a strong sense of place. I love historical fiction.
Right.
Or I love books that, really capture the feel of a certain city.
Yeah.
Well, that's a niche.
It is.
There are people out there who that's what they want.
Absolutely.
You know, that they want to feel like they're transported somewhere.
Yeah, and so even if you're writing fiction,
Right.
identifying that niche can help you make creative choices.
Right.
That really resonate with those readers.
Yeah, so, okay, we've talked about how it's important for fiction, nonfiction. But they were also saying in this podcast episode that this goes way beyond books.
It does.
It's like a life strategy.
Yeah. They even went so far as to say that niching down can be a powerful tool for life in general.
Right.
And I think it makes sense because how often do we feel pressure
Oh my gosh.
to be good at everything?
From the time.
Right? Like, we have to have a million hobbies. We have to excel in our careers. Be the perfect parent, the perfect friend.
Right, and social media doesn't help.
No.
Because you're always seeing.
Right, you're constantly bombarded with these images of people who seem to have it all.
Yeah.
But what if, instead of trying to be everything to everyone, we embraced the power of specialization? What if we focused on becoming truly exceptional at one or two things that we were really passionate about?
You know, it reminds me of a friend of mine who is this amazing baker.
Okay.
And, you know, she started out just baking for friends and family.
Right.
And then she was like, you know what, I really love making wedding cakes. And so she niched down.
She did.
And now she is like the wedding cake baker.
Wow.
In our entire city.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's because she focused.
She found her niche.
Yeah. And I bet her marketing is so easy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she knows exactly who to target.
Right, and where to find them.
Yeah, so it's like, they were saying it's not about limiting yourself.
It's about unlocking your potential.
Yeah.
It's about becoming indispensable.
Yes.
And that applies whether you're writing a book, building a business, or just navigating your own life.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? They shared this quote in the podcast
that
I loved.
What was it?
It was from Seth Godin. And he said, don't try to appeal to everyone. You can't be all things to all people. Be specific, be authentic, and then your tribe will find you.
I love that.
Isn't that good?
That's so good.
So it's like, just be yourself. Find your people.
And the people who are meant to find you will find you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about how it's important for all these different things, but let's get practical.
Okay.
What can people do to start defining their niche?
So they actually give this really cool framework.
Okay.
It's called the 4 Ps of niche.
Ooh, I love a good framework.
Me too.
Okay, so what are they?
So the 4 Ps are passion, problem, people, and platform.
Okay, I think I can remember that.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to remember.
The passion, that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
What are you excited about?
Yeah, what lights you up?
Yeah.
What could you talk about for hours?
Yeah.
What could you geek out on?
Right, because if you don't care about it,
it's gonna show.
Yeah.
You know, readers can sense that lack of authenticity. So start by brainstorming a list of topics that you're truly passionate about.
Okay, so that's passion.
What about problem?
So problem is all about thinking about what specific problem your book is going to solve for your readers.
Right.
So what are their pain points? What are they struggling with?
Right. So like with our procrastination example, it could be students feeling overwhelmed by deadlines.
Right.
Or entrepreneurs who are like, you know, stuck in analysis paralysis.
Exactly. And the more specific you can get with the problem, the better.
Okay. And then people.
People, this is where we revisit those ideal reader profiles.
Okay.
Who are you writing this book for?
Yeah.
What are their demographics, their psychographics, their interests, their aspirations?
So not just like, are they male or female, and how old are they?
No, it's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's about understanding their values,
Yeah.
their beliefs, their hobbies.
Yeah, even like what social media platforms they use.
Exactly, because the more you understand your ideal reader,
the better you can tailor your content and your marketing to resonate with them.
Okay, so we've got passion, problem, people, and platform.
Platform.
What is that?
So platform is all about thinking beyond the book itself.
Okay.
Where are your ideal readers hanging out online? Well, are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Are they in Facebook groups?
Right.
Are they on certain websites or forums?
Yeah.
Understanding their preferred platforms will help you figure out how to reach them.
Right, like you're not going to be on TikTok if all your readers are, you know, over 60.
Exactly. And sometimes your platform might actually inform your niche.
Okay.
Like, for example, if you have a large following on a platform that's primarily focused on personal finance, that might influence the type of book you write.
Right. You wouldn't write a book about gardening.
Probably not.
if everyone is following you for financial advice?
Exactly.
Okay, so the 4 Ps.
The 4 Ps.
Passion, problem, people, platform.
Yes.
Okay, I feel like I'm getting this. But there's one thing that they talked about in the podcast that I wasn't really sure about.
Okay.
And it was this idea of sub-niches.
Sub-niches.
Yeah.
So can you explain that?
Yeah, so think of it this way.
Okay.
Your main niche is like the broad category that your book falls into.
Right.
But then within that category, you have these smaller, more specialized pockets.
Okay.
And those are your sub-niches.
So like if our main niche was procrastination.
Right, self-help for procrastination.
Then our sub-niches could be procrastination for students.
Exactly.
Procrastination for entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Procrastination for creative types.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm starting to see it now.
And each of those sub-niches has its own set of needs.
Right.
Its own challenges, its own keywords.
Right.
So while your book might appeal to a broad audience of procrastinators, by understanding those sub-niches, you can create even more targeted marketing campaigns and content.
So it's like being even more specific. Exactly. It's like having multiple layers of specificity to ensure that you're reaching the right people with the right message.
But is there a risk of being too specific?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of authors worry about.
Right.
You know, they don't want to alienate potential readers by being too narrow.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, a niche that's specific enough to stand out and attract a dedicated audience, but not so narrow that you're limiting your potential reach.
So it's like a balance.
It is a balance.
It's like everything else.
Like everything else in life.
And you know what I like too is they're saying it's not set in stone.
No, it's not.
So you can start broad, and then as you kind of
as you learn more
get to know your audience,
about your audience,
see what's working, what's not,
you can refine it.
You can kind of
adjust it,
hone it down.
Exactly. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And you know, who knows, you might even discover some new sub niches along the way that you hadn't even considered before.
Yeah. Okay, so this is all great for books, but how does it apply to other parts of life?
Well, I think it all comes down to embracing your strengths.
Okay.
And focusing your energy on what truly matters. Wow. So instead of trying to be good at everything, what if we identify 1 or 2 things where we really excel? And then we pour our hearts and souls into developing those skills.
So like finding our own personal niche.
Exactly. And it's not about limiting ourselves.
Wow.
It's about unlocking our full potential by becoming the best we can be at something we're truly passionate about.
I love that.
And you know, it's interesting to think about how niching down can actually create more freedom and opportunity in the long run.
How so?
Well, when you become known as the go-to expert in your field, you attract the right collaborations, the right opportunities, the right clients.
The right everything.
Exactly. People come to you because they know that you're the best at what you do.
It's like you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
By focusing on your niche.
Yeah.
You're creating this world where people need you.
Exactly. And that's a much more empowering and fulfilling way to live than constantly trying to be everything to everyone.
Yes. Okay, I'm feeling so inspired.
Good.
I think it's time for us to move on.
Okay.
To the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
And look at some real world examples of authors who have really...
Who have nailed their niche.
Nailed it.
And seen some amazing results.
Okay. Are you ready to hear some inspiring stories?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so we've talked about all this theory, but let's look at some real world examples.
Yeah, because like seeing how this actually plays out is so helpful.
Yeah, and they share some great stories in the Author Success podcast of authors who like totally figured this out.
Yeah, one that really stuck with me was about this author who had written a series of fantasy novels.
Okay.
And they were good, like well-written, imaginative, full of adventure. But they weren't selling.
Oh no.
Yeah, and the author was getting really discouraged, like ready to just give up. But then they had this realization they were trying to appeal to like everyone who likes fantasy. But their real passion was for stories that had strong female protagonists who defied traditional gender roles. So they decided to just go all in on that. And they kind of rebranded their series to focus on those elements.
So they niched down within fantasy.
Exactly. And it was amazing. Like, their books started attracting this whole new audience of readers who were like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And they became known as like the go-to author for feminist fantasy. And their sales just skyrocketed.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it just shows you like niching down isn't about shrinking your audience. It's about finding the right audience.
Yeah, finding your people.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we think that if we're too specific, we're gonna like, turn people off. But it's actually the opposite.
It is, because when you're trying to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one.
Yeah. They also talk about on the podcast this author who was kind of pressured to write in a certain genre that wasn't really their passion. But it was like, you know what's hot right now? And so they wrote this book. And it just didn't do well.
And they weren't happy with it either. Like, it felt inauthentic.
And so it's like, write what,
Exactly.
Like, you're not excited about it. It's going to show.
Your readers can feel that. They can sense when something is genuine and when it's not.
So, so we've seen how this works for books. But what about other stuff?
Well, they actually talked about this in the podcast too.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, like how this applies to other creative endeavors. Like, they told this story about a musician who was super talented. But they were like struggling to make a living. Playing gigs at coffee shops and open mics and just kind of like blending in with all the other musicians. But then they had this epiphany. They realized they had this like unique passion for this very specific type of music that nobody else was really doing. And so they decided to focus on that. They niched down. And they started getting gigs at like specialized venues and festivals. And their career took off.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because they created their own market. By embracing what made them different.
Yeah, it's like that saying, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And so, you know what this whole conversation is making me think about, like my own podcast. When I first started, I was trying to talk about like all kinds of stuff. But I've noticed that the episodes that do the best are the ones where I'm like really geeking out on something that I'm passionate about.
It's that passion that shines through. And people are drawn to that.
So it's like I've been niching down without realizing it.
You have.
You
found your sweet spot.
So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just that niching down is not about limiting yourself. It's about finding your power. It's about embracing what makes you unique. And sharing that with the world.
So ask yourself, what's your niche? What's your unique value?
What you bring to the table.
And how can you make a difference?
And remember, it's a journey. So be patient.
Experiment.
Have fun with it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Hope you learned something.
Me too.
And until next time, happy writing.
And happy